None? No, thank you. Any declarations of interest from members on items to be discussed? I take silence to mean no, thank you. Public question time. Have we received any public questions? No, thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting beginning on page 1. Are members happy to agree those as a correct record?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, so that takes us on to item 6, beginning on page 5. This is the highways investment and the key principles that surround that. Of course, members will recall that following the Labour Group AGM, where I was elected leader of the group, and the Council's AGM, where I was elected leader of the Council, I did pledge to invest money in highways across the borough in response to the views of residents that have been expressed throughout the election campaign, who had a perception that it was something that we could do far better on as a council. And so this report before us brings forward the principles of delivering on that leadership pledge. And we're looking at investing capital investment of £12 million in highways over the next 3 years. Now, of course, the way that's going to be split will be determined in a number of ways, and it will ensure that those areas that have not received investment in the last few years and where the network is more deteriorated than other parts of the borough do begin to see that investment. I know that in some parts of the borough, through devolved budgets on district executives, some members have been more proactive in investing in highways, particularly in my own area of Failsworth and Hollingwood. I know that we've put a significant amount of money in from those devolved budgets, and that has left our highways in a good position, but that's not been the case everywhere. And so we can catch up and put some of that right. So that is the investment in highways that we're proposing. Do any members have any questions or comments on this report? No. Oh, Councillor Shah.
Just to say a big well done, really, and I think it's really important because one of the things that we lack public understanding for is our investment in the highways network system. And I think that the fact that we've now all our main routes are really in good order, it gives us a really good opportunity to concentrate on the secondary routes and make sure we improve them. And I think ward member involvement in that is crucial.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Just on that, I do want to reinforce how important it is that ward members are involved, and now the opportunity that people as local decision makers, that councillors as local decision makers will have the opportunity to influence this programme, and that's a message that needs to get out to the wider public. When you report something to your councillor on highways, there is now money available to put it right, and I would encourage members of the public to do so and really engage in local democracy and report these matters. Thank you. Are members happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 7. This is the disposal of landowners Plateau 1, situated between Salmon Fields and Turf Lane. Are members happy to take this report as read? Are members happy to agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 8, beginning on page 15, empty homes. Councillor Roberts, are you taking us through this item? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As Cabinet members will be aware, we have got increasing pressure on homes in Oldham, with rising numbers of families who are in temporary and including bed and breakfast accommodation. This report is recommending the introduction of a pilot scheme to bring empty homes in the borough back into use. As I'm also sure that you're aware, most of the empty homes in the borough are not in any form of public ownership, but are privately owned. So it's about us trying to find ways of having a kind of carrot and stick approach to encourage people to bring homes back into use. We currently have about 1,100 empty homes across the borough. We know this from our council tax records. And while the numbers have been reducing in recent years, we think it's important, given that the stresses that there are around housing, to do what we can to encourage more to come back into use. So what the recommendations in the report today are in the form of a pilot scheme, which will be part funded by Homes England and part funded upfront by the Housing Revenue Account, to carry out two types of proposals. The first is a purchase and repair option where we would buy an empty home, take the necessary works to bring it into a good standard and then let it. And the second is a lease and repair scheme where we would encourage homeowners to come into a contract with us around leasing the property, and again where they would make sure they were of an adequate standard and would then let. Both of these models require us to go through procurement processes for partners to help us to deliver and manage the lettings, and we are looking at in the first model of the purchase and repair to look at a social rent, and in the second model to look at an affordable rent, and to take households off of our housing register, where we have about 4,000 households who are in identified housing need who need a home. The financial implications of this are discussed in more detail in the closed part of the meeting, but the report that's on the agenda here today outlines the options that are available to the Council and recommends that we agree to the pilot scheme, testing out both the lease and repair and the purchase and repair models, backed up by Funding for Homes England, and that if these prove to be successful, that we look to return to Homes England to make an application for a larger scale programme.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. I have Councillor Chowan indicating.
First of all, thank you very much and well done. It's really important project. As a society, we can't justify having 1,100 empty homes and then people being homeless, children and families being placed in guest houses and rest houses, or even being on the streets. So I think whether it's carrot or stick or whatever approach we need to adopt, it's absolutely important that we try our best to make sure those houses being occupied. So big thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowan. I've got Councillor Jabbar.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Similarly for me as well, I want to welcome this project. I think it's a fantastic initiative. So it will bring back properties into use. And I think more than that, it will be a home to somebody, hopefully somebody who is inadequately housed at the moment in Oldham. So this will be a better home. And I think with this initiative, Chair, as well, that we sometimes forget to underestimate the amount of disruption and damage it causes, and empty property causes in the neighbourhood. And sometimes we see a lot of antisocial behaviour, we see fly tipping, we see neighbours being very upset from a property being run down in their street, in their neighbourhood. So this is another point that this initiative tries to address. And the final point I would make, and you'd expect me to make that, is the additional money that we'll be getting from government, which is covered in the private part of the report. So it's not all our money. And I think the reason why government is putting the money into this area, Chair, is because they recognise the damage that an empty property causes in a neighbourhood. So, Councillor Robert, well done. I think this is a great opportunity, and I really look forward to this, after the pilot, this being rolled out as a project to address the empty properties within the borough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If nobody else wishes to speak on this, I just want to welcome this from Councillor Roberts. This is a fantastic initiative. Councillor Jabbar is absolutely right that across the borough there are homes that are criminally not being used when we have so many people on the housing waiting list. It is unjustifiable that homes remain empty, and anything that we can do to bring those back into use is very important, and we should be doing it. And Councillor Jabbar is correct in the way that often when homes lie empty, they do become a blight on the neighbourhood. And I can think of half a dozen or so in my own ward that time after time, when I go around and canvass for the local elections, we find that they are empty, they are untidy, and they are a real frustration for neighbours in and around those homes. So anything that we can do to improve that situation is certainly welcome. So thank you. Are members happy to agree the recommendations on item 8?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 9, we have the request for additional funding and contract award at Crompton House School expansion. Councillor Jakes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a welcome item this in terms of, as we all know, there is additional pressure on school places across the borough, like many other boroughs. School places are very scarce. What we've managed to do in Oldham is set aside almost £30 million for expansion. The proposal that's set before you today is for Crompton House C of E School to have a new 3-storey classroom block, a dining room extension and internal alterations at the cost of just over £10 million. Clearly the cost has gone up somewhat, but that was due to the tendering process, the additionality we're putting into the building and also additional cost for parking on the school, because we recognise that any expansion requires additional parking for schools and staff. So I would put forward to you this proposal. I think it's the right thing to do, the right step, and we recognise every school and every community needs to be of the highest order, and I think what we're trying to do here is alleviate the pressure, but more importantly build good schools in the right areas to accommodate local needs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jakes. Do members have any comments or observations on this report? No, thank you. Do members agree the recommendation as set out in the report?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 10 is my report, the Unity Partnership Shareholder Committee Terms of Reference. Members will be aware that shortly after the leadership change, though it wasn't attributed to the leadership change, I'm not going to claim credit for that, Unity Partnership became a company that was wholly owned by the council. It was brought back. The private sector partner that we were in that partnership with no longer has a share in that company, and I think it's a great example of a Labour administration taking public ownership seriously. And I know that, ooh, controversial. I know that there are some changes afoot within Unity Partnership, including on union recognition and the living wage that we've been able to make as a result of that coming back in house. Because of that, we have to set up a shareholder committee to look after Unity Partnership, and all this proposal does is set out the terms of reference and the composition of that shareholder committee. Do members have any comments or observations on this report? No. Oh, Councillor Chowan.
I think this observation on union recognition, despite it being called as a controversial, I think it's important that as this administration we recognize that unions are guardian of terms and conditions of working people, and we as administration fully support unions because we don't have anything to hide. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowan. Do members agree the recommendations as set out in the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 11, beginning on page 57, is the proposed changes to registrars' service fees and charges. Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pretty straightforward report, this. It's just for us to consider the proposals which recommend that we reduce charges for some of our ceremonies at certain venues, and this was triggered because fees that we've set in the budget for 2018 and 2019 for registrar service resulted in a greater increase than we've done previously, which is about £79 increase on charges for wedding and civil partnership ceremonies, both at external venues and also the Oak Room at Chadderton and the Green Room at Chadderton Town Hall. And it was triggered by feedback that we had by couples who had booked their weddings in advance, and due to the increases, when it actually came to paying for the wedding, it presented hardship for them. So taking that on board, we've got set out options in part 4 of the report, which says that we should reduce them. And we think that would encourage more bookings and help generate income.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Shah. Any comments or observations on this report? No, thank you. Do members agree the recommendations as set out in the report? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, so item 12 is the exclusion of press and public. So the cameras need to go off, and we'll just give it a moment for people who